Dust settled like old grief on the boards of the cattle pens. The wind moved slow that morning, dragging last night's smoke across the low sun. And in the hush before the trading bell rang, a girl sat still as a shadow at the edge of the auction yard, hands folded, chin tucked, trying not to take up space. Etta June wore a dress made for someone smaller, once blue, now bleached by years and sun. The seams strained at her sides when she breathed deep, so she didn't. Her cheeks, round as baked apples, stayed downcast, but her eyes wandered, taking in the things she was too shy to reach for. A couple kissed over a bucket of feed. A little girl licked molasses from her fingers. A boy no older than 14 held a rooster like a prize and strutted past proud. Her mama stood 3 steps away, hawking bartered lace and homemade jam. Doreen was bone-skinny and sharp-lipped, the kind of woman who always looked like she was biting something bitter. Her hair was pinned too tight, and her words tighter. Folks said she'd been a beauty in her day, but Etta couldn't see it. All she saw was a face carved from disappointment. "Stand up straight," Doreen hissed, not bothering to look at her daughter. "You hunch like a sack of flour. No man wants a woman who slumps." Etta tried, shoulders tugging back as if they weren't tired. She didn't answer. She rarely did. Words felt heavy in her mouth these days, like dry biscuits she hadn't asked for. The bell rang. Traders began to call out their wares. Chickens squawked. Horses snorted. A girl screamed, laughing near the sweet pie table, and Etta winced at the sound. It was too bright, too free. Doreen didn't ask. She didn't explain. She just reached for Etta's wrist and pulled her forward like she was showing off a cow for stud. "This one here," Doreen said loudly, "to no one and everyone. She can cook, so do house chores quiet as you like. Eats too much, but it means she don't break easy. Take a look." Etta froze. A silence settled around them. Not complete, not kind, but that hush people fall into before they laugh. The men gathered weren't drunks or monsters, just tired folks, dusty boots and dry eyes. But there was a tone in their quiet that made Etta want to vanish. "She got a name," someone called out. "Etta June," Doreen snapped. 17. Strong as a bull, gentle as milk. And she needs a man who won't coddle. A rancher with yellow teeth leaned in, scratched his chin. "Too soft. Ain't got the hips for a wagon ride, I'll tell you that. Might break the axle." A burst of chuckles followed. One man nudged another and muttered something about plenty to hold on to. Etta didn't move. Her ears rang. Her stomach sank like it did when the creek froze fast and the animals had to wait for water. "She's got her father's shoulders," Doreen said bitterly. "Lord help us." Then from the edge of the square, a voice spoke. Low, steady, unhurried. "She'll do." It wasn't said cruelly, not lustfully, just like a man saying he liked the sky before rain. All heads turned. A figure stepped forward from the lean shade of the mercantile's overhang. Long coat, hat pulled low, dusty boots and silver at the belt, but no flash, no swagger. Levi Boone. Most folks knew the name, fewer knew the man. He owned the North Pasture and kept to himself. Didn't drink, didn't play cards. Rarely came into town unless someone was dying or a calf needed salt. He walked slow, deliberate, like he measured steps with the earth. Doreen's eyes narrowed. "You serious?" Levi said nothing. Just pulled a coin from his pocket, real silver, not trade tin, and laid it gently in her palm. Doreen stared at it. "She ain't livestock," she muttered. "You just sold her like she was," Levi replied. Calm, not cruel. "This'll square it." He turned to Etta. His eyes met hers, quiet, dark, not pitying. He didn't flinch, didn't leer, just offered a nod, like she had a choice. "Got a place needs keeping," he said. "If you'd like." Etta looked at her mama, who had already turned back to her jars. "Go on then," Doreen muttered, wiping her hands. "Best deal I'll get for you, with that face." Etta's throat worked, but no words came. She followed Levi, because standing still hurt worse. Her heart beat louder than the footsteps she made, and the air felt thick, like the world had just turned a page she didn't know how to read. They walked through town without speaking. passed the Grange Hall, the empty schoolhouse, the blacksmith shop where boys sometimes whistled as she passed. None did now. Levi didn't touch her, didn't offer an arm, but he walked beside her, not in front, not behind. His horse was tied near the churchyard, where the wild rose bushes tangled the fence. He mounted easy and reached a hand down. She took it, surprised at how firm and warm it was. They rode north. The land widened. The wind cooled. Hills stretched like sleeping giants around them. After a while, Etta spoke, just above a whisper. "You gonna tell folks I'm your cook?" Levi didn't look at her, just kept riding. "They can call you what they want," he said. "Ain't none of it true unless you say so." She stared at the ground moving beneath the horse's hooves. "I don't know what I am," she said finally. "Then maybe we'll find out," he answered. They rode until the sun was low and orange, spilling over the buttes like molten honey. Levi's ranch came into view, modest, clean, nestled by cottonwoods and a shallow creek. A porch swing moved in the wind. Chickens scattered from the path. He helped her down. "I'll show you the bunkhouse," he said. "It's yours. Got a stove if you like baking." Etta nodded, unsure how to breathe in this new quiet. Before he turned to go, Levi looked back once. "No one here expects you to be smaller," he said. "Just honest." She stood on the porch after he left, watching the way the sky turned indigo above her. The air smelled of hay, smoke, and soap. She didn't know where to put her hands. She didn't know who she was now. But for the first time in a long time, nobody was watching her like a problem. And maybe, just maybe, that meant she didn't have to watch herself like one either. The first morning, the wind carried the smell of warm earth and split cedar. Etta June rose before the rooster crowed, not out of habit, but because the silence inside the bunkhouse felt too foreign to sleep through. There were no creaking floorboards above her, no hissed orders from her mother in the dark. Just the rustle of the cottonwoods and the low hum of dawn breaking open like a secret. She lit the stove the way she'd seen her father do once, careful, steady, and coaxed flame from cold iron. A loaf of bread sat waiting to be mixed, though no one had asked her to bake. She did it anyway. It was the one language she still trusted. Outside, the ranch slowly stirred to life. Cows lowed. A dog barked twice, then gave up. Hooves clattered gently across the hardpan near the barn. And then Levi Boone emerged, carrying 2 pails and walking like he'd been carved from the same quiet the land offered. He tipped his hat when he saw her through the window. She didn't smile, not quite, but something in her chest eased. He didn't say much when he came in, just nodded at the scent of rising dough and placed a small sack of flour and some dried apples on the table. Then he poured himself a cup of coffee from the pot she hadn't remembered starting and sat near the door, boots still dusty, coat still on. "I wasn't sure if you'd stay," he said, voice like river stones and worn wool. "I wasn't either," she replied. Her hands kept kneading. "But your door didn't lock." "Never has." They didn't speak more than that, but by the time the loaf went into the oven, the silence had turned companionable. Not empty, not stiff, just quiet, the way certain trees grow best when left alone. Later that day, a woman came up from the south pasture, broad in the shoulders and sun-bronzed like an old saddle. She had a silver band where her left ring finger used to be, and a gait like she'd fought someone bigger than her more than once. "You the girl?" she asked, squinting. "I'm Etta," she answered, dusting flour from her dress. "Well, I'm Clara. I help Levi with the hands and the books. You don't owe anyone here a smile, but don't waste a good pie on silence, either." Clara reached for the bread cooling on the windowsill, tore off a corner, and popped it into her mouth. "Damn, that's comfort." She left after that with a wink and a muttered promise to return if the biscuits stayed this good. Etta watched her go, unsure what to make of a woman who treated her like kin without flinching at her size, her silence, or the fact she hadn't earned a place here yet. The days stretched long and honest. Levi didn't watch her with expectation. He didn't ask her to cook or sew or clean. But he noticed things. When she sang while scrubbing the copper pans, he paused in the doorway. When she knelt to feed the chickens, he left a handful of cracked corn near the coop without a word. He never entered the bunkhouse uninvited, never hovered, never stared. It was strange, that kind of dignity. Etta had always been taught a girl like her was supposed to earn her keep fast, with eager hands and downcast eyes. But Levi gave her room to exist slowly. One afternoon, a storm blew over the hills. Not thunder or lightning, just heavy wind and grit. Etta sat on the porch with her apron folded in her lap and watched it twist through the grasses. Levi joined her, carrying a small wooden box. "Something for you," he said, and set it down. She opened it and gasped. Buttons. All kinds. Bone, mother of pearl, worn brass. Some still had thread clinging to them like ghosts. Others were shiny and new. "For mending?" she asked. "For keeping," he said. "Or sewing. Or stringing into something. You seemed like the kind of woman who'd know what to do with pieces." She blinked hard, unsure why her throat felt tight. He didn't stay to watch her reaction. Just tipped his hat and walked back to the barn. That night, she made stew and left a bowl on his porch. She didn't leave a note. She didn't need to. A week passed, then two. Each day layered slow trust on top of deeper quiet. Clara returned often, sharp-tongued but kind, telling Etta stories of Levi when he was younger, of the girl he almost married but didn't, of the war he never talks about. "He's not soft," Clara warned one afternoon, sipping tea. "But he's steady. Like the kind of rope you don't see fray till you lean too hard. He won't say it, but he watches you." "I know," Etta said. One morning, Levi handed her a small note, written in tidy script. "You mentioned liking ponies. There's a paint mare in the East Corral. Skittish. Yours if you want her." She hadn't remembered saying that aloud. Maybe she hadn't. She found the mare that afternoon. White with cinnamon spots, eyes wide with suspicion. Etta didn't approach fast. She knew what it meant to be touched without trust. Instead, she sat near the fence and hummed softly, pretending not to care if the creature came near. 3 days later, the mare took a step toward her. Each small kindness layered like dough. Each moment, without cruelty, let something deeper rise. But not everyone was silent with grace. Levi's younger brother, Miles, came up from the southern claim with his easy smile and loud boots. He was charming in the way men are when they've never been told no. When he saw Etta, he grinned. "Well, damn, Levi. Didn't know you were running a home for strays." She froze. Miles meant it to be funny, maybe. Maybe not. Levi said nothing. His jaw tightened, but he let it go. Etta didn't cry. Not that night. But the next morning, she didn't come out to feed the chickens. She stayed in the bunkhouse and stared at her hands. The door knocked gently at mid-morning. Levi's voice low and careful. "You okay?" She didn't answer. He waited. "I don't belong here," she said finally. "Did someone tell you that?" "No. But they think it." A pause. "Then I guess I'll have to outlast their thinking." He left a piece of cornbread wrapped in cloth on her porch. When she unwrapped it, a button sat on top, small and copper, like a sun set in metal. That night, she baked again. Something shifted. She let Clara braid her hair. She taught the paint mare to follow the sound of her humming. She laughed once, just once, when Levi tried to patch a saddlebag and got the needle stuck in his thumb. The world didn't change fast, but it softened. And so did she. Not smaller, not quieter, just truer. By the end of that month, she'd found her voice again, not the one her mother had sharpened or the one fear had quieted. A new voice, one made of bread rising and wind passing through open windows. And in that voice, a woman was forming. The rains came soft that spring, the kind that whispered across the tin roof at night and left the earth breathing easier by dawn. The grass near the fence line grew tall, silver-tipped, and the old cottonwoods dripped quietly, their bark darkened like river stone. Etta June woke early most mornings now, not because she feared the day, but because she had begun to look forward to it. In the kitchen, she moved with a grace she didn't recognize in herself yet. Measured steps. Flour-dusted hands. Her apron had new threads where she'd reinforced the ties. She'd always known how to make do, but now she stitched not from shame, but from care. The kind that grows when you believe something might last. The paint mare, now named Marigold after the yellow spot on her nose, stood calmer than she used to. She came when Etta called, her ears forward, her eyes steady. Each morning, Etta brushed her coat with quiet hands, whispering nonsense and lullabies. The animal had grown used to her presence, even protective. They were two of a kind, sturdy, soft, misunderstood. Levi Boone watched from a distance. He never interfered, never offered praise like a man expecting something in return. He simply stood nearby, arms crossed, as if letting the moment be what it was. He had a habit of leaving small things where she'd find them: a folded kerchief, a better knife for peeling apples, an old leather-bound book of prairie herbs with her name written inside the cover in crooked but careful ink. He didn't speak much, but what he did say stuck. When she'd asked if he believed in ghosts, he'd replied, "Only the kind we carry." When she'd asked why he didn't look at her the way others did, he'd said, "Because you're not here to be looked at. You're here to be known." That was the difference, she realized. He didn't want a version of her. He just wanted her, whole, unsure, learning. Still, the world outside their quiet had its own voice. The town, with its long memories and short mercy, had started to whisper. It began at the trading post, where a woman commented too loudly that Etta had found herself a man who didn't mind big bones. Then came the side glances, the smirks, the joke smiles repeated without thinking, sharp-edged things he assumed she wouldn't hear. Etta did hear them. She heard it when a man asked Levi, "You fixin' to marry her or feed her to the cattle?" She heard it when a boy behind the mercantile sang, bigger bigger than the moon. Maybe that's why she eats like noon." Levi never laughed. One afternoon, she found herself sitting beside the stream that curved behind the ranch house, watching the minnows dart between shadows. Her feet were bare. The hem of her dress was damp with creek water. She hadn't meant to cry, but it came anyway, quiet and stubborn, the way rain falls even when the sky seems clear. Clara found her there, as if she'd known without being told. "You think if you were smaller, you'd be left alone?" Clara asked, settling beside her with a grunt. "That folks would respect you more?" Etta didn't answer. Clara snorted. "You could be made of smoke, and someone still try to stamp you out." They sat in silence for a while. The water moved gently, like it had all the time in the world. "You're not soft in the way they mean," Clara said eventually. "You're soft like earth, like something things grow in." Etta looked at her hands. "My mama said softness was weakness." "Your mama didn't know how to grow anything but fear," Clara replied. "You're growing a life." That night, Etta didn't hide her tears when Levi came to check the fences. She stood on the porch, arms crossed over her chest, chin high despite the redness around her eyes. "I know what they say," she told him before he could ask, "that I'm some charity project, that you took me in like a stray." He didn't move closer, just looked at her with that steady patience she'd come to recognize as more powerful than any sermon. "I didn't take you in," he said. "You stepped in." "And if I hadn't," she asked, "if I let that freight handler take me, I'd still be here. You'd still be you. But I'd be worse off for not knowing you." She shook her head. "You don't have to say things just to." "I don't say things I don't mean," he interrupted, gentle but firm. "And I won't say more than you're ready to hear." She swallowed hard. "I don't know what I am to you. You don't have to name it tonight." He turned then, leaving her with the stars and the soft creak of the porch boards. But she felt it, that thread between them, unspoken, unbroken. Over the next days, she moved with a new resolve. She didn't walk faster or smile more, but she held her head differently. When folks whispered at the trading post, she let them. When Miles made another joke, she asked him if he'd ever tried chewing on his own tongue. Clara cackled for a full minute. And when the preacher visited unexpectedly on Sunday afternoon, asking after Levi's maid, Etta met him at the door. "I'm not the maid," she said. "I'm the woman who makes the biscuits you praise every picnic. I'm also the one raising a skittish mare and planting basil near the kitchen door. You can call me Etta." The preacher blinked, reddened, then nodded and asked if he might have a glass of water. She brought him sweet tea instead and let him sit in the sun. Later, Levi passed her in the hall, brushing the back of his hand against hers. Just once. A light touch. But it stayed with her long after he'd gone to check the western ridge. One evening, As the light faded into pink and the barn door creaked in its hinge song, she found herself in the kitchen, humming a tune she hadn't sung since childhood. The pie crust cooled on the sill. The oil lamp flickered beside her. She moved into the open space near the table barefoot and let her hands mimic the melody. A slow turn, a half step, the beginnings of a dance no one taught her. She didn't see Levi watching from the doorway. He didn't speak, didn't interrupt, just stayed still, as if afraid breath itself might startle the moment. Etta stopped only when the song left her. Their eyes met. "I didn't know you danced," he said quietly. "I didn't know I remembered how." He stepped inside, boots soft on the worn planks. "Would you like a partner next time?" he asked. "Maybe," she said, "if I get to choose." "You already did," he answered, and left her with that. That night, in the bunkhouse, Etta sat with her button box on her lap. She pulled out a smooth piece of carved wood Levi had tucked inside weeks before, a button shaped like a heart. She hadn't used it yet. Wasn't sure where it belonged. Now she knew. She sewed it onto her apron, right above the pocket, where her hand might rest when she felt unsure. It was something small, but it was hers. The wind changed before the sky did. It came in low and strange from the east, not with thunder or warning, but with a hush too heavy to ignore. It rustled the wheat differently. It pulled the curtains of the bunkhouse a little more sharply. And somewhere deep in her chest, Etta June felt it, like a shiver before a name you haven't heard in years. The ranch was quiet that morning. Marigold paced the fence line more than usual, nostrils flaring. Even the chickens seemed uneasy, clucking low and restless as Etta scattered feed. She wiped her hands on her apron and looked toward the distant trail. She saw the rider long before she saw her face. Doreen, coming up the road on a borrowed mule, stiff in the saddle and mean-eyed as ever. Her dress, once proud and pressed, sagged under dust and sun. A younger woman rode behind her, slim and upright, with pale curls tucked neatly under a bonnet and a wedding ring that flashed like a weapon when she lifted her gloved hand. Etta felt her stomach tighten, a reflex like reaching for something that isn't there anymore. She stood still, apron flapping in the wind, watching them close the distance. Doreen didn't dismount right away. She looked at the house, the barn, the trees, taking in the quiet beauty of the place as if it offended her. Then she finally climbed down and dusted off her skirt with a snap of her wrist. "You've gotten fatter," she said. Etta didn't flinch. "And you've gotten smaller." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It held everything they hadn't said in years. The younger woman stepped forward, face pinched in polite discomfort. "I'm Mercy, Doreen's daughter-in-law." Etta raised an eyebrow. "So, she did find someone to marry her son." "He's managing a dry goods store out near Cold Springs," Mercy offered, trying to smile. "We're building something." Doreen cut in before the conversation could go anywhere warmer. "We're traveling through. Thought we'd stop and see if you were still playing milkmaid for the silent one." "She's more than that," came Levi's voice, low and measured, from behind the gate. He walked in slow, hands loose at his sides, eyes steady. There was no menace in him, only gravity, the kind that makes everyone else feel suddenly too loud. Doreen didn't like being looked at that way. "You buy her?" she asked, chin lifting. "I saw her," he said, "and I didn't look away." Mercy looked between them, uncertain. Doreen didn't move. "You think just because you put her in a quiet house and let her bake your bread, she's healed? You don't know what she is." "I know what she isn't," Levi said. "She's not yours anymore." That landed harder than any shout. Etta saw it in her mother's face, a flicker of something like disbelief, like insult laced with fear. The kind of fear bullies feel when their trick stops working. "You gave her away," Levi added. "I just made sure she wasn't lost." Mercy laid a hand on Doreen's arm. "Maybe we should go." But Doreen shook her off. "I want to know what you're playing at, girl. You think this ends in a wedding? In a nice little life? You've always been weak, always wanted someone to feed you, tell you who to be." Etta stepped forward then, her boots steady on the dry earth. "I used to believe that," she said. "But you were wrong. I didn't want someone to tell me who I was. I wanted someone to let me find out." Doreen scoffed. You think that's what he's doing? Letting you discover yourself? No man's that generous. He'll get tired of it. Of you. They always do. Maybe, Etta said. But I won't get tired of me. Mercy looked away, cheeks pink. Doreen took a breath, like she was ready to spit something crueler. But Clara emerged from the barn then, wiping her hands on a rag, eyes sharp. You've said enough, she told Doreen. Time to go. I'm not speaking to you, cripple. No, Clara said. But I'm speaking to you. There was a weight in her tone. Not rage. Not threat. Just finality. Doreen's face twisted, anger, fear, pride all wrestling for a voice. But she said nothing more. She turned sharply, mounted her mule, and pulled the reins. Mercy hesitated, looked at Etta. I hope you stay happy. Etta nodded once. I hope you get to be more than polite. Then they were gone, trailing dust behind them, the wind swallowing their tracks almost as fast as they made them. Etta stood still for a long time after. She felt like something had cracked, not broken, but opened. A door long shut, finally giving way to light. Levi stepped beside her, said nothing, just stood there until she leaned slightly toward him, and he didn't move away. That night, a stone crashed through Levi's window. No one was hurt. The glass shattered with a quick, ugly sound, and a rock rolled across the floor like a thrown insult. Tied to it was a strip of paper with crude handwriting. She don't belong here. Neither do you, Boone. Clara found it first and muttered something sharp under her breath. Levi didn't say much. He just picked up the rock and tossed it into the fire. Etta sat on the porch, heart thudding. The fear wasn't overwhelming. It was duller now, like a bruise that wouldn't fade. But it was fear all the same. I can't be the reason someone comes for you, she said, when Levi joined her. You shouldn't have to answer for me. He sat beside her, one boot brushing hers. You think they're scared of you? She didn't answer. They're scared of what you make me, he said. And what I let you be. She turned to him, really looking. You gave me space, she said. I gave you shelter. You gave me worth. No, he said gently. That was already there. I just didn't take it from you. The porch light buzzed above them. Somewhere far off, coyotes yipped and fell silent. I was going to leave, she admitted. After today. Before the rock. I didn't want you to keep paying for someone I used to be. Levi looked at her then, a stillness in his gaze that held no judgment, only truth. You don't owe me anything, Etta. But you do owe yourself the right to stay. She looked down at her hands. Hands that had once trembled when offered kindness. Hands that could now hold a frightened animal still, could knead bread until it bloomed, could thread a needle through a heart-shaped button and not break the thread once. I don't want to run, she whispered. Then don't. She met his eyes. What if people don't stop? They won't, he said. But they'll fade. Or they'll get tired. Or they'll find something else to fear. You. He reached for her hand. You'll be here. And I'll be here. And that'll be enough. She felt the warmth of his calloused fingers closing gently over hers. No demand. No promise. Just presence. Just a truth that settled deeper than fear. The next morning, she rose early. She baked 2 loaves of bread. One she left on Levi's table, still warm. The other she carried with her into town. She walked through the trading square in her apron, hair braided, shoulders back. She passed the mercantile, the post, the steps where boys used to whisper. She didn't stop. She didn't hide. At the churchyard, she placed the bread on the picnic table set for Sunday gathering. A few women stared. One older man tipped his hat. She nodded once and left. That afternoon, she sat beside Levi on the porch as the wind blew softer, cleaner. Clara brought lemonade. No one spoke much. Miles rode up later, sheepish, and handed her a bag of nails and a new bonnet. I said some stupid things, he muttered. Etta took the bonnet gently. You did. I didn't mean them. Then don't say them again. He nodded and left without asking for more. Evening came easy. The stars scattered above them. The ranch lay still and safe. Etta stood barefoot in the kitchen, humming that song again. The one without a name. The one made of memory and breath. Levi stepped in, held out a hand. She took it. They danced slow, quiet, with the pie cooling on the windowsill and the lamp flickering in gold circles. Not because they needed to, not because it made a statement, because love had come quietly, patiently, not crashing down, not sweeping in, but growing, like a vine through stone. And when she rested her head against his chest and felt his breath steady as her own, she knew she wasn't too much, wasn't too soft. She was simply someone who had survived long enough to be loved the right way. And she wasn't going anywhere.